Hello friends, Namaskar. In this video, I will try to answer a question that we keep receiving quite frequently at Lament. That is, what are the cases that are going to be important for the upcoming CLAT PG examination, that is CLAT PG 2023, which is going to be conducted in December of 2022. Incidentally, this happens to be the third year when I'm making a video on the same question because the CLAT PG new pattern was introduced in the year 2020. Prior to that, the CLAT PG was just like any other regular LLM entrance exam with the normal objective type questions. In 2020, the consortium decided that the CLAT PG would be more of a comprehension type exam. And there were also some new changes that were brought about. That is, there would be two parts in the CLAT PG examination. There would be the 100 question objective part, and there would also be a 50 mark subjective part. And this subjective part would require candidates to write 2 essays for 25 marks each. And there was also a sectional cutoff that was introduced, wherein they said that a candidate would have to score at least 40% in the subjective part for the objective part to be evaluated. So if a candidate has done exceptionally well in the objective part, but has scored less than 40% in the subjective part, then the objective part would not be evaluated at all. In which case, obviously the candidate would not get a All India rank. So there was quite a bit of a confusion around how this entire process would work, because if a candidate does not get an All India rank, not only would the candidate be out of the CLAT process, but the CLAT marks could not be used for admissions at any of the affiliated institutions as well. Because every year, almost 60 to 70 affiliated institutes use the CLAT marks for their own admission process as well. So before the consortium actually came around to clarifying as to how this entire process would work, the exam itself kept getting postponed because of the ongoing pandemic situation. And finally, just a month or so before the exam, the pattern was again changed. They said that this subjective part would be completely dropped, and the objective part was increased from the proposed 100 questions to 120 questions. Even in 2021, the same story repeated itself. Initially, they came up with a notification stating 100 marks objective, 150 marks subjective, and the exam got postponed. And finally, the pattern was changed to this 120 mark objective type examination. So in 2020, there was quite a bit of confusion because there were no previous question papers. There were not many mock tests that were available in the market, and nobody was sure as to what kind of passages would be given, what kind of questions would be given, and where the passages would be taken from. The only saving grace was just a few weeks ahead of the exam, the consortium did release some model passages and some model questions so that students could get an idea as to what kind of passages to expect. But still, there was quite a bit of a struggle. Everybody was in the same boat, and everybody had to go through the same experience. And in fact, if you look at the marks that were scored by the students in 2020, they also reflect the kind of preparation or the lack of preparation that the students had to go through to take up the exam. And by 2021, there was quite a bit of a clarity because we had the previous year's question paper to use as a model. By 2021, there were plenty of mock tests that were available in the market, and the pattern of the paper was also quite clear. And in 2022, we obviously had the advantages of having seen the previous couple of years question papers and also the minor changes that were brought out in 2021, where the passages became shorter and the number of questions for each passages was also reduced. So we have seen the 2020 and the 2021 paper. Therefore, in 2022, we could refine the strategy that was to be used in preparing for the exam and attempting the question paper. So coming to 2023, now I guess we are in a much better shape because we have the 2022, 2021 and the 2020 question papers to use as models. And having seen the kind of passages and the kind of questions that are based on this passage, we have an extremely good idea as to what is the strategy that you can use to prepare for this exam and what are the strategies that you can use to answer these questions. So let's talk more about that. Starting with the question paper format that has been announced for the current year. No surprises here. There will be 120 questions and each question will carry 1 mark. So the entire paper is for 120 marks. And the paper has to be attempted in 120 minutes, that is 2 hours. And there is a 0.25 negative marking for every incorrect answer. So there won't be any negative marking for any questions that you decide to skip. Coming to the syllabus, there is just a generic mention that there would be a specific focus on constitutional law because it is mentioned separately. Apart from that, there are all the regular LLB subjects like jurisprudence, contract law, criminal law, public international law, etc. So no surprises so far. Moving on to the syllabus and guide part of the notification. This part has been carried over from the year 2020 because in 2020 there was a subjective part that was going to be introduced into the CLAT PG, and even in 2021 the subjective part was proposed to be introduced. But in both these years, just a little ahead of the exam, the final pattern was again changed and the subjective part that was proposed was dropped and only the objective part was retained. So if you look at the notification, they have just been changing the year. They just made it from 2020 to 2021, then to 2022, and now they have changed this to 2023 and re-released the same information. Because in 2020 and 2021, there was this first section would include 120 objective type questions. So this was the information about the objective part, and there was one more section here which spoke about the subjective part. But when the pattern was changed, they just deleted the details about the subjective part and retained only the information about the objective section. But they have forgotten to delete this, the first section would include, right? So please don't get confused about this first section or second section. In the current pattern of the CLAT PG examination, there is just one section, which is the objective section for 120 marks. And the rest of the notification is pretty simple. You can just go through it at your leisure. They are just saying that you'll be given some extracts, that is passages from primary legal materials such as important court cases from various fields of law. So now this such as is something that gives you a clue that not all the passages will be based on court decisions. There will be passages which will be book extracts. There'll be passages based on various articles or journals. So some of the passages will definitely be taken from some of the important cases from the year of the examination or some of the preceding years. But at least 30 to 40% of the passages will be from other sources. If you look at the timeline of important events leading up to the 2023 examination, you'll see that there is a mention of a first sample set being released sometime in September, and there will be a second sample set that will be released sometime in October, and there is a mention of a third sample set being released after the last date for receiving applications. So this should have said November, but here I think by mistake they have still mentioned it as October. In any case, looking at what happened in 2020, 21 and 2022, the consortium will not release a complete model question paper per se. They will just release a couple of passages and maybe a few questions for each of these passages to give students an idea as to what kind of passages to expect and what kind of questions will be based on those passages. They will not give any explanations or rationale as to how they arrived at that particular answer. They will just give a passage, some questions, and indicate what is the correct answer for those questions. So in case there is going to be any surprise or there are going to be any changes in the pattern of the questions for the current year, then these sample sets should give us a good idea about any last minute changes that might be sprung by the consortium. But looking at what has happened in the previous 2 or 3 years, we can say that at least the pattern of the CLAT PG examination is more or less fixed. And we can use the CLAT PG 2022, 2021 and 2020 question papers as a model for our preparation. This would be a good time for me to address one more hot topic, that is how much should you score to be able to get a seat in one of the top NLUs. In 2020 and in 2021, the consortium actually published the All India merit list. So we could see what was the actual marks that were scored by these candidates. And the last All India General Merit category candidate who got a seat in NLSAU was rank holder 70. And this person scored 55.5 marks, which translates to 46%. And NALSAR, it was AIR 108. And the person scored 52.75, which translates to 44%. NLIU, it was rank holder 169 who got the last All India General Merit seat. and this person scored 49.75 marks, which translates to 42%. So now if the percentages are looking a little on the lower side, this is probably because of the fact that the new pattern was introduced in 2020 and students were not sure about what kind of passages to expect and what kind of questions would be based on this passage, what could be the strategy that should be used for the examination, and the preparation was not done in an optimal way, which is reflected in these percentages. By 2021, things have improved. If you look at the actual percentages, they have gone up quite significantly. But if you look at the rank, the All India rank of the last person who got a general merit seat in this year, that is in 2021, you can see that there is a slippage here, because in the previous year, the last candidate who got a seat in NLS IU was 70, and here it has gone down to 153. And you can see a similar slippage in the other NLUs as well. Now this is because in 2021, a large portion of the candidates, that is almost 25% of the candidates took this exam just for the sake of appearing in the PSU recruitments. And this is something that we have seen in 2022 as well, because if you look at the admissions list for NLSIU, rank holder 1 to 9 are actually missing. The first person who got a seat in NLSIU in the All India General Merit category is rank holder 10, which means that rank holders 1 to 9 and number of toppers in the exam, right? They have all actually dropped out of the CLAT PG process, and they just are using the CLAT PG scores for PSU recruitments. And this is something that we will be seeing this year as well. Now, coming back to the question as to what is it that you should score to be able to get a seat in these top NLUs. Well, if you are scoring somewhere in the 60+% in the mock test series, and if you are scoring somewhere in the 60+% in the previous question papers, right, then your preparation is on track. So you should be able to get a seat in one of the top NLUs. Now, don't go by what happened with AIR1, because if you look at any of these previous years, there is a vast difference between the person who has topped the examination, and if you look at the rank holders a little down that series, then you'll see that there is a significant difference. That is, AIR1 in 2021, this person scored 71.45%. Right? But by the time you come to AIR 153, you can see that it has gone down to 58.13%. Right? In the previous year, that is in 2020, you can see that AIR 1 is at 60%. But by the time you come to AIR 70, it has gone down to 46%. So in 2022, because the All India merit list has not been released, we are not able to look at the marks scored by all the rank holders, but some of the details have been published in some interviews and some other websites. So we see that the lady who scored AIR 1 in 2022 got 94 marks, which translates to 79%. So this is something that you should take with a pinch of salt, because if you go a little down, that is AIR 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, then you'll see that the percentages would have dropped in a similar way as what we have seen in the previous years. And in any case, the person who got AIR 1 this year, this lady happens to be a LLM graduate, and this is the second time that she's taking the CLAT. And last time around, apparently she scored somewhere in AIR 130 or something in that range. So she has the advantage of having taken this exam multiple times. And because she is very focused on taking this exam just for the sake of PSU recruitments, so she has prepared quite well for this examination, which is reflected in her marks. But if you look at what is your target score going to be to get a seat in one of the top NLUs, well, it should be somewhere in the same range as what we have seen in 2021. So if you are scoring somewhere in the 60+% in a good mock test series and in the previous question papers, then your preparation is on track. Before I can answer the question, what are the important cases for the upcoming examination, let us take a look at where did the passages actually come from in the recent previous years. In 2020, when this new pattern was introduced, you can see that just around 50% of the passages were based on cases, and some of these cases were from the year of the examination, and there was one from the immediate preceding year, and there were a couple of cases from the recent years. And if you look at the other passages, they were based on books, journals, or articles. And the average length of the passages in 2020 was around 450 words, which is why there were just 12 passages and there were 10 questions associated with each passage. In 2021, the average length of the passages has decreased to around 250 words. So the number of passages has been increased to 20. And there are 6 questions associated with each passage, retaining the overall 120 questions. And 50% of the passages are based on cases from the year of the examination and the immediate preceding year. And the other passages are based on cases from various years. And yes, there are a couple of passages which are based on a report or extracted from a book. But in 2021, a bulk of the passages were based on case extracts. Coming to the most recent exam, that is 2022, the average length of the passages is still around 250 words. And just a little over 50% of the passages are based on case extracts. And the other passages are based on articles, they are book extracts, or there is also one which is based on a judgment from the International Court of Justice on the ongoing issue between Russia and Ukraine. Now, if you look at these articles, they are again based on cases, but the passages are not directly taken from the case extract. They have been taken from these articles. So which means that the opinion of the authors or some of the inferences by the authors are actually included in the passages. And if you look at the year, there is a good sprinkling of cases from the year of the examination and the immediate preceding year. And plus there are also some passages which are taken from cases which go back all the way up to 1952. So which are the cases that are going to be important for the upcoming examination? Well, now that you have seen the sources of the passages from some of the most recent previous question papers, you'll be able to appreciate that answering the question is not so straightforward. Because it is not just as if I can give you a list of cases and say that these are the specific cases that are going to be important for the upcoming examination. Because we are dealing with a lot of variables here. That is, there are quite a few things which cannot be predicted. That is, how many of the passages will be based on cases? And even those passages which are going to be based on cases, how many of those cases will be from the year of the exam or from the immediate preceding year? And since there will be at least 40 to 50 landmark cases every year. So which of these cases will the passages be based on? And the judgment for many of these cases goes into 30 or 40 pages. So which part of the judgment will be used for these passages? Therefore, we are dealing with a number of variables here, which makes it pretty much impossible to predict that these are the specific cases that you need to prepare. But then again, there are a lot of things that can be predicted about the upcoming examination. That is, if you look at my analysis of the 2021 question paper, you'll be able to see that almost 50% of the questions were of direct nature. That is, these are questions that could be answered using the information that was given in the passage itself. So you don't have to look outside. Right? And there were also questions which could be answered using general knowledge or general legal awareness. So if you look at the overall question paper, a bulk of the questions could be answered using the information that was there in the question paper itself. There were some contextual questions, that is, questions which would require you to read the source of the passage. But the percentage of these contextual questions was pretty minuscule. Right? Therefore, shouldn't we be focusing on these direct questions and these external questions? If you look at my analysis of the 2022 question paper, you'll find a similar story here as well. That is, almost 65% of the questions are direct, which can be answered using the information within the passage or sometimes with the information in the question or the answer choices themselves. And almost 31% of the questions are external. That is, you don't have to read the source of the passage or even the passage, but these questions could be answered using your general legal knowledge or general legal awareness. So if we cannot predict the source of the passages, and if we cannot prepare well for these contextual questions? Shouldn't we just be focusing on the direct questions and the external questions? Because by just focusing on the direct and the external questions, we will still be preparing for almost 95% of the question paper. Now, what if somebody were to give you a list of landmark cases from the year of the examination and the immediate preceding years and told you that these are the specific cases that you need to read, understand and remember to prepare for the upcoming examination? How would that approach work? Well, even if I were to just tell you to read, remember and understand the source of the passages from the 2021 question paper, then you are looking at documents that can be hundreds of pages in length, or even if you were to look at the typical judgment these days, they can be anywhere in the range of 30 to 40 pages. So even if you were to focus on a select list of landmark cases from the year of the examination and the immediate preceding year, you are easily looking at having to remember somewhere in the range of 1500 to 2000 pages worth of information. So it is not a practical solution if you were to use that method. Right? And even if you were to look at the most recent question paper, that is from 2022, even here the average length of the source from where these passages have been taken can be anywhere between 30 to 40 pages. So even if you were to try to read and remember only these documents or the sources of these passages, even that would be a fairly challenging task, or I would say, at least for me, it would be an impossible task, because not only would you have to remember the entire document, you will have to understand the nuances of it, because the passage that is given in the question paper can just be a few hundred words and you don't know from which part of the judgment that passage will be taken from and what is the type of question that will be asked based on that particular passage. Therefore, trying to prepare for the CLAT PG examination using a case-based approach, using a specific list of important cases, would be a fairly difficult task. So going back to what I was mentioning a little while ago about the three types of questions that you'll find in the CLAT PG question paper, that is the direct questions, the contextual questions and the external questions. Right? So here, when it comes to direct questions, you have full control because the answer is within the passage or within the answer choices themselves. So you don't have to look beyond the question paper to answer these direct questions. However, what you need here is a good amount of practice with a good mock test series, because while these are direct questions, the answer may not be so easily apparent. Right? You will have to practice reading the lines and reading between the lines so that you get a hang of how to identify the information required to identify the correct answer, or at least the information should help you in eliminating some of the answer options. Right? So that's how you need a good amount of practice to tackle these direct questions. And when it comes to these contextual questions and the external questions, you have no control because these can be quite random in nature and the answer is not within the question paper. So here you need to practice an effective strategy. That is, how can you eliminate some of the answer choices so that even if you have to take a guess, you are increasing the probability of guessing the correct answer by eliminating some of the incorrect options. Therefore, what you need to do to prepare for the upcoming examination is to prepare with a good mock test series and attempt as many mock tests as possible. So what is the ideal overall strategy that I would recommend for the upcoming CLAT PG examination? Well, if around 65% of the question paper is going to consist of direct questions, then this is where you should try to maximize your scores. And you should practice a good guesswork strategy for the general questions, which is the contextual questions and the external questions. And also be practical. You have to accept the fact that it is impossible to be 100% prepared for this current format of the examination. Therefore, pick and choose the battles that you want to fight. And be calm. That is, when you are attempting a mock test or you are reading a case or you are trying to read some article, the first pass you might not be able to understand everything, right? And that is quite normal. That is, don't get agitated. Be calm, read it once, read it twice till you understand it. And be regular with your preparation. I've seen people on both ends of the scale. There are people who take 1 or 2 mock tests and just because they are doing quite well, they get overly confident and they stop their practice. Or there are people on the other end of the scale who will take 1 or 2 mock tests and just because they have not done so well, they decide that, I'm not good enough for this examination, so they stop their preparation there. So in any case, you cannot judge yourself on the basis of your performance in 1 or 2 mock tests. So be regular with your preparation and give yourself time. Focusing a little more on the prep strategy for the direct questions, what you need here is practice, and more practice when it comes to reading passages, because comprehension is not just about reading fast. It is about being able to understand what is being said by the author and what is not being said by the author and what is being implied by the author. Therefore, you need to get as much practice as possible with relevant mock tests. That is, mock tests which are calibrated in the same range as the actual question paper. And time management is going to be very critical, because if you give me an entire day and a passage and a set of questions, I'll be able to answer all the questions. However, given the fact that you have an average of just around 1 minute per question, time management is very, very critical in this examination. Therefore, practice as much as possible with a good mock test series so that you can practice the comprehension part and also the time management part. And moving on to the prep strategy for the general questions, that is the contextual questions and the external questions. Here you have to attempt all the old pattern previous question papers and mocks, because you'll see that many of these external questions are based on the information that you would have probably seen in some of the old pattern question papers or questions that you can see in other examinations. Therefore, you have to solve all the old pattern CLAT PG question papers and solve as many old pattern mocks as possible, because not only is it going to help in your preparation for the CLAT PG, it is also going to help in your preparation for some of the other exams that you might be taking, like the IIT KGP or BHU LLM or DU LLM. And you have to be familiar with some of the important cases from the year of the exam and the immediate preceding year. While it is impossible to read and remember all the details of the judgment, you should be aware of the high-level information about these cases as to what are these cases all about and what was the key issues that were discussed in this case and what was the decision in this case. Right? And again, to repeat, you have to practice an elimination strategy, because there will be many questions where you have to at least eliminate 1 or 2 answer choices and you will be left with 1 or 2 and you will have to pick between those. So you have to guess, but by eliminating some of the answer choices, your probability of guessing the right answer will increase. Therefore, practice a good elimination strategy. So what is this elimination strategy that I keep talking about? Well, this is something that is very rudimentary, and you are thoroughly familiar with this and you have used this probably many times in the past. However, the more practice you get, the better you will become at it. Just like driving, because just after a month of attending any driving school, you would have learned everything that is there to learn about driving, right? However, the more practice you get, the better driver you become. So similarly, elimination strategy is something that you are familiar with and you have used this in the past. But the more practice you get, the better you will become at it, even without realizing it. So now let's look at a very simple example. So the Supreme Court decided upon the issue of permanent commission for women in the armed forces in which of the following cases. So now, if I were to randomly select one of the options from among the 4 choices, then the probability of my selecting a correct answer would be somewhere in the range of 25%. That is 1 out of 4. Now I know that the DK Basu case has something to do with arrest and custodial death. Therefore, this cannot be a case that is related to permanent commission for women in the armed forces. So I have eliminated one option. Now the probability of selecting a correct answer from among the remaining options has gone up to 33.33%. Now I vaguely remember that the Puttaswamy case is something to do with Aadhaar. Therefore, I eliminate that as well. Now the probability has gone up to 50%. And if I'm able to eliminate the Indra Sani case as well, then the probability goes up to 100%, because the correct answer is the Babita Punia case. So when it comes to the CLAT PG examination, if you practice an elimination strategy and if you are able to eliminate at least some of the answer choices, so even if you have to randomly pick from the remaining choices, the probability of selecting a correct answer increases. Another important aspect of your preparation for the upcoming examination would be to get a good overview of all the important cases that have been in the news in the recent past. So for this, the source that I have been recommending quite strongly is LiveLaw's YouTube channel. If you go to the channel, you'll find a couple of playlists called Quotes This Week, which happen to be both in Hindi as well as in English. So watch these videos starting with the most recent one and watch them at least for the year of the examination and probably some of the older ones as well. And these are more than sufficient to get a good overview of all these important cases on a week by week basis. Just to add a disclaimer, we don't have any affiliation with LiveLaw. This is just a personal recommendation because I myself use these playlists to keep track of all the latest judgment that keep happening week on week. So, which are the cases that are going to be important for the upcoming examination? Well, you should be aware of all the landmark cases from the year of the examination and the immediate preceding year, and focus on the cases up to at least 2 months prior to the examination, because that's when the question paper kind of gets finalized, right? And focus on all the cases which deal with any national level issues and cases where there has been some interpretation of the constitution, and cases which affect a wider set of citizens, and focus on cases which have been in the news for various reasons. So these are some of the typical markers that you can use to identify the cases that you should focus on for the upcoming examination. Another very important aspect of your preparation will be to understand the 2021 and the 2022 question papers in detail, so that you get a good idea as to how you could have tackled the direct questions and the indirect questions. So I've done a detailed analysis of both these papers on our YouTube channel, so you can go and find the playlist and watch them at your convenience. And with that, we come to the end of this video. If you have any questions or feedback, please put them in the comment section below. And when you have the time, please go to lawman.com and check out some of our mock tests and previous question paper series for CLAT PG and other popular LLM entrance exams, and also other law related exams. I will see you again very soon in some of the other videos on our channel, where we will discuss more about CLAT PG and about other LLM entrance examinations. So till then, take care, stay safe.